And good afternoon, everybody. My name is Manuela Baccarini, and I'm the Vice Rector of the University of Vienna. My tasks here, my goals here, are to promote research and international relationships and support young talent. It is therefore my pleasure today to welcome all of you to the start of the lecture series, Foundations and Methods of Digital Humanism. A special welcome to our keynote speaker, Professor Helberger. Thank you for accepting our invitation today. Special welcome also to two great champions of digital humanism, City Councillor Kaup Hausler, who has already launched many initiatives in this area, and of course, Michael Stampfer, the Managing Director of the Vienna Science and Technology Fund, which generously funds the activities of Viennese scientists in this and other areas. In 2023, the fund has funded 6 projects in its digital humanism call, 3 projects from the University of Vienna, and 1 each from the Vienna University of Technology, the Vienna University of Economics and Business, and the Vienna University of Applied Arts. So we have reasons to celebrate here. And we're also planning a larger initiative in doctoral education. I'll be very happy when that happens, but that's for another day. Being a comprehensive university, the University of Vienna, the largest and oldest university in Austria, has tremendous potential for innovation deriving from the collaboration between disciplines and research fields. Innovation, we all know, happens at the interfaces, and in recognition of this concept and of its societal responsibility, the University of Vienna supports collaborative research that is expected to contribute to addressing global challenges. We do this in the context of 6 strategic priority areas through which we plan to generate synergies and make an impact on society by combining the insight, ingenuity, and expertise of our scientists and educators. One of these areas is digital and data-driven transformations of science and society, and of course, artificial intelligence is a big part of this. With its ability to change how we analyze data and process the results to make strategic decisions, AI has a transformative potential, I would say similar to or even definitely greater than the agriculture or the industrial revolution, because it's in our hands, right? It's in our phones. Everybody can access it. So I would say it is a new frontier with tremendous potential that needs to be harnessed. We as universities have a responsibility to accompany and shape transformations. The University of Vienna intends to do this for AI. We are confident that we can do it, thanks to the variety of disciplines represented at our university, ranging from mathematics to psychology to social sciences to law. Importantly, as the institution that educates the largest number of teachers in the country, the University of Vienna can play a major role in how society perceives, accepts, and understands AI. If we want to make an impact, however, even a large comprehensive university like ours will need to join forces with other institutions in Vienna and in the country and internationally. And this is part of the strategy that we have elaborated for the next 4 years. Of course, we hope for the continuing support of the City of Vienna and of the WWTF in our endeavors. And with this, I would hand over to Councillor Kaup Hausler. Sit back and enjoy the talks and the discussion.
Good afternoon to all of you. I'm very glad and proud to welcome you to the third circle of the Ring-Vorlesung, of the circle lectures in collaboration with WWTF and the University of Vienna. I think it is imperative that we go to research this vast field which digitalism and AI, ChatGPT provides. We all know, maybe you are all too young, but some decades ago, there was this invention of the internet by Tim Berners-Lee, and when I heard about it the first time, I might be in your age, it was said to be a new democratic platform, exchange worldwide, new forms of communication will uprise. So it was full of utopian, visionary thoughts. Now, 20, 30 years later, we see what this makes to society. On the one hand, we have a big benefit in so many levels. It is incredible how this entered our life, but it is also incredible how we observed, especially in Europe, development which got out of our hands. And that's why we think it is imperative that we take the good things from the internet and from the digitalization of our times, but to start and to continue deepening research on all implications of us, of our society, of our way to perceive the world, also the way of communication. You all are witnessing a time where we see vast changes in societies, and you are coming from the Netherlands. Austria followed this right-wing path, we have to say, and we see how the use of social media, how the use of ChatGPT, how the use of many things really is an attack to our democratic system. And I think we need you as a young generation. You are not the problem, you are the solution. And I wish and I hope for a critical understanding with no fear, but with an interest to put the human being and society and the peace we want to achieve in society again into the core of our investigation. There is a lot, there are many books around which make you afraid, maybe. The last one I read, and I'm not coming from techniques, I have to say, I have to apologize. I'm coming from theater science and literature, so it is quite far away from my academic path, but it was Mustafa Suleyman's The Coming Wave. You might have heard about it. It's a bestseller you can read, and he's one of the many voices addressing the challenges we have in our society. And he also, unfortunately, only in the very, very last 30 pages of a thick book, but then he comes to the chapter of hope and what we should do as society on all levels. So there has to be an understanding that we, as a city, as a country, as universities, scholarships, we all have to work, and industry, of course, we have to find ways to think about a reasonable containment with, in the same time, also fostering the good development for mankind. This is a big thing, I know, but the city supports all developments, and whatever we can do in our collaboration with the university, we will do to make Vienna in the tradition of humanism as a center of digital humanism. So that's what we are planning. We are planning a huge conference next spring, because we have to be fast. We have to gather the knowledge. We have to share this knowledge. And don't be afraid, even if we are in times that could make you afraid, but we have to work on it and to do everything we can to provide this kind of strength that we believe in a society which can handle all the challenges which are around us, the wars, the climate change, the social issues we have in our society. It is there. Okay, we didn't choose that, but we have to work on it. And like Reinhard Goetz, a wonderful writer, said, don't cry, work. So have a good time listening, working, and be the good ones.
Thank you, Veronica. I take this personally. I will work. Dear students, this mic, sorry. Dear colleagues, dear students, dear city councillor, a few words also from my side. WWTF as a funder is, as has been said already, is quite active in this field, and normally we are very keen not to be too prescriptive to the researchers when we come forward with programs. But with digital humanism, we are quite sure that we are on a mission, and we know that there's a lot of researchers that support this mission. So this kind of active setting of topic is something we deem in this case as a very important thing. This is a mission to fund really cross and help realize cross-disciplinary activities and also transdisciplinary activities for questions, and I think I would like to say that at the start of this Ring-Vorlesung, questions that cannot be posed on a level, the questions are super big, and we should not be afraid to ask and try to answer these super big questions. That starts with the picture behind me. Star Wars, at the end of the day, is a conflict between state actors. But now perhaps the Death Star is a private one who even has not to comply to whatever. Natali is a law expert. She will perhaps explain what companies are not responsible, or they think they are not responsible today. And we are really discussing questions in the Digital Humanism Initiative about what's the future of the rule of law, what's the future of the social market economy, what's the future of free and unbiased and truth-laden speech, and other things. And we invite you also to criticize digital humanism as a concept, or what's truth as a concept. I think that's the funny and interesting and exciting thing with such an interdisciplinary event like this Ring-Vorlesung, where we really, of course, the Ring-Vorlesung is there that you make an intellectual and the Bologna step, that's for sure. But please give us also something. We want to learn something from you, and not only, it should not be a unidirectional event. So for us, this is a very strong, integral part of our Digital Humanism Initiative. And over the next months, and Sophie will talk about that also perhaps for a second, you will hear the most exciting researchers here in Vienna. But we are very happy to start with the renowned international guests. Many thanks.
Thank you, Michael. My name is Sophie Lechler. I'm Professor of Political Communication, and together with Professor Thorsten Möller from the Faculty of Computer Sciences, we're the ones organizing this lecture series, this Ring-Vorlesung. I want to thank again Vice Rector Baccarini, City Councillor, and also Michael Stamper from the Vienna Science and Technology Fund. That's the English? Yeah. Correct, great. For making this possible, and for letting us have this great lecture series. You're all going to be happy to hear. I just looked at USpace, our sign-up system. The students in this room and online are from every possible study program you could think about, from philosophy to physics, from doctoral program, from the bachelor program, from the master programs, from law, from psychology, from political science. They're coming from all over to hear about digital humanism, and I know there are also other interested listeners in the room who are here to hear more about digital humanism. But I'm not going to talk much more because we need all the time we can get with our keynote speaker, and I have the honor to introduce her. I want to introduce you all to our first speaker, the brilliant Natali Helberger, Professor Natali Helberger from the University of Amsterdam. Just a few words about her. Natali is a distinguished university professor in information law and digital technology at the University of Amsterdam. She's a member of the Royal Holland Society of Sciences, Royal Netherlands Academy of Arts and Science, Social Science Council of the Academy of Arts and Science. She's an expert for the European Parliament, the Council of Europe, and other European and international organizations. And she's also the leader of the AI, Media and Democracy Lab at the University of Amsterdam, and co-leader of AlgoSoc, Public Values in Algorithmic Societies. So fair to say, she is more than qualified to speak about digital humanism from her perspective. And we're so very honored to have you, Natali. And we're looking forward to your lecture. Just in terms of process, Natali's going to talk, or Professor Helberger is going to talk for about 45 minutes. And then we have time for Q&A. So write down your questions, mark your questions, and we can have time for those after her talk. Please, Natali.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the kind words, for the invitation to talk to you, for supporting this initiative. And I'm very honored to be here and kick off this Ring-Vorlesung. And the word of transdisciplinary, interdisciplinary research has already many times been mentioned, but I would also like to highlight that this is not self-evident, and that a couple of years ago, and still, if we hear AI, we mostly think about technology or algorithms or tech or black boxes, and this understanding that AI transcends disciplines and is really a question that affects the entire society. I think that is a very hopeful development for democracy, AI, research, and society. So that is very cool, and I'm really looking forward to learning more about this digital humanism initiative in Vienna. With the rollout of ChatGPT, OpenAI and co launched maybe one of the largest societal experiments we can imagine. What happens if we make extremely powerful technology essentially available to anyone who has a smartphone, which is probably all of you, right? Or a computer. And with this question, the question of what is responsible use and development and deployment of AI has become vital to the continued success of our democracy, because language is what makes our democracy function. Language is also what makes our law functions, and today I would like to talk also indeed about the law, and if the AI Act is a new hope for democracy. Some of you may know we have a new law, the AI Act, and soon after the European institution adopted it, they started celebrating that Europe is now a global standard setter in AI. So I would like to introduce you to what the AI Act means for the governance of AI and indeed AI companies and Darth Vader, should he ever decide to program his own large language model. I'm not sure who of you is actually from law here. So for those who are, you will also understand that law is not only about texts and books and dust. It's actually also about power and conspiracy. And I think the AI Act is the best example. So I really hope if any of you has any ambitions as a filmmaker to actually dive into the whole story of the making of the AI Act. And if you ever thought law is boring, then I really suggest that you look deeper into how this law has been made, because this is a story of passion, of power, of intrigue, of heroes, of traitors, of competition and conspirators. With stars like Ursula von der Leyen, the ambitious head of the European Commission that was set out to tame the power of big tech, the representatives of the European Parliament fearlessly fighting for civic rights, your rights actually, and stricter rules for Gen AI, the mysterious Cedric O, who almost managed to derail the entire act, and we will hear more about that in a moment. Or take Luca Bertucci, the fearless reporter, without whose reporting we would have never had known what has actually happened within these European institutions. Not to speak of this whole army of lobbyists, NGOs, policymakers, civil society, though reportedly the industry lobby has outweighed it in the council with 13 industry lobbies on one NGO in the council. So let's hear how this ended up, this story. But before telling you a bit more about the AI Act, I would like to dive into some of the issues, problems, but also opportunities from AI that this AI Act will hopefully help us to solve. And in preparation of this talk, I asked Sophie if I still have to explain what ChatGPT is. Probably not, probably all are using it, but maybe just some words to get us all on the same level. ChatGPT, I think, is an example of the most famous generative AI system right now. It's GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer, and it's powered by a large language model. Typical examples of such large language models include indeed OpenAI's GPT, or take Meta's Llama, or Google's Gemini. And these large models we typically refer to as foundational models, and that's also one of the big differences with traditional AI systems is that these models are built and trained for a specific, traditional models are built and trained for a specific purpose. Generative AI, or as the European Commission calls them, general purpose AI, is not. And as we will see, this is a very important difference also for the law. ChatGPT has been one of the fastest growing consumer applications ever. It took Netflix 3.5 years to get to the first million of users. ChatGPT did this within an hour. And part of that is because it's simply so incredible, simple to use. Almost like a search engine, which we are very used to using. And someone who has learned the hard way that ChatGPT is not a search engine is this poor New York lawyer that some of you might have heard. It was a really experienced lawyer, more than 10 years practice in court in New York. And then he heard from his kids about this super machine that gives you all the content you can desire, and asked the machine to write a 10-page briefing about a case he was dealing with. And he got 10 pages, including references to court cases and so far. The only problem is none of these cases really existed. They were completely fabricated. And so this lawyer hopefully got a very important lecture that generative AI is not a search engine, but essentially predicts what the next word in a sentence is. So what are we up against? AI, foundational models, generative AI are often seen as something technical, as I just mentioned, but AI is also inherently social, and this is also what your Digital Humanism initiative is very much about. AI is the product of our interactions with this technology, and it's transforming our society. And as such, AI is also deeply political, as you can hear in this quote. With its wide variety of applications, AI is not just a technology, but also a mechanism for organizing society. It's an inherently political tool that affects the power of the distribution of power in society. And part of the challenge of regulating generative AI is indeed also how to deal with the shifting powers in society that you already referred to. So let's see how generative AI is organizing power in society. And let's turn first to the dark side of AI power. The philosopher Harari, I'm not sure who of you read him, he brought it to the point. He called language the operating system of our civilization. So according to Harari, democracy is a conversation. And conversations rely on language. When AI hacks language, it could destroy our ability to have meaningful conversations, thereby destroying democracy. Dire word, and I might want to add, this also is true for pictures and sound, of course. And over the past 2 years or 3 years, we've seen various accounts of how AI has indeed been used to hack language. There were reports from content farms that automatically produce content and thereby crowd out real voices, and thereby compete also with real media as a democratic institution for our attention as a scarce resource. The Guardian in this article reported about a story how ChatGPT, the New York Times reported in a story how automated content production is actually used to fabricate lobby communication and swamp mayors with this information to potentially influence the democratic process. The other way around, Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, as you know, was quoted in the Washington Post saying, personalized one-to-one persuasion combined with high-quality generated media is going to be a very powerful force. Because with a mouse click, it becomes possible to fabricate personalized political messages to convince voters to vote or not vote, and adjust the message to each of your individual persuasion profiles. And you all can try it. I gave in ChatGPT, I asked ChatGPT, you are a political advertiser for the Trump campaign, give me an advertisement for a 45-year-old teacher. And then you see, I hope you can read it, the slogan would be, teachers deserve respect and support, no more red tape and mandate, President Trump is committed to funding schools and empowering parents, and so far. If you then ask it to write a text for a student, ChatGPT suggests, your future is on the line. President Trump is fighting for job opportunities, lower taxes, and campus-free speech. And then if you ask your political advertiser to write a text for convincing a Mexican immigrant to vote, ChatGPT tells you President Trump supports legal immigration opportunities for those who follow the law. He's working to create safer communities and better jobs for your family. And at this point, you start also realizing that the system has no clue what it's talking about. And it's just that, a bag of words, without real comprehension. No comprehension, but also no commitment to truth. This is just one out of many, many examples of pictures, deepfakes that have been produced with the help of AI. Taylor Swift allegedly supporting Trump, which is again not true because, as you very know, she has recently stepped out to actually endorse Harris. I'm not sure who of you is familiar with Dutch politics. This is one the leader of our WWD. This is Pieter Omtzigt. How he looks and dances. And you start wondering what would happen if these politicians really decided to enter a career in music. Unfortunately, they didn't. But there you already see how easy it is to produce rather convincing deepfakes. Another example of how generative AI can affect the political process is this example from the Slovenian election last year, where concerning an audio deepfake, in which allegedly the leader of the Liberal Progressive Party and a journalist discussed how to rig the elections of buying votes from the country's Roma minority. Of course, it was all fake after fact check, but it was already too late because the deepfake has been widely circulated on Facebook. And there you also see a double challenge of these kind of synthetic contents, because voters can believe the information to be true, and especially audio is actually really difficult to fact check. But it also can result in distrust in the information that you see, even if it is true. So an example was actually prior to the Polish elections, there were a massive march in Warsaw to support the pro-European party from Tusk. But on X, formerly known as Twitter, users suggested that the videos of the march had been doctored using AI to make the crowd bigger. So back to Harari. Democracy is about having meaningful conversations that ultimately lead to political decisions, but this requires that we must be actually able to trust that we do have real conversations with real people. And the problems run much deeper. No automatic commitment to fundamental rights. I mean, you might have heard about the issues of bias. This is just a very quickly generated picture asking the system to Midjourney to generate a picture of a room of an electorate. And as you might notice, it is heavily biased, wild, blank, middle-aged men, whereas normally a city population is much more diverse. No commitment to intellectual property rights, another big issue, especially when it comes to the media. The New York Times right now is actually suing OpenAI, claiming that in order to train their models, OpenAI has essentially used the entire content of the internet, including the copyright-protected content of New York Times. And they New York Times arguing actually that OpenAI tries to free ride on the Times' massive investment in journalism, using the Times content without payment to create products that substitute for the time and steal audiences away. And we could continue these issues, but it's also interesting to see that, for example, this copyright question not only divides the industry, but also very much opinions. A recent survey we did with the Associated Press found that actually more or less half of all news workers were actually concerned about copyright issues, what they called theft, taking away livelihood and chances of a sustainable business models for the media, asking why would you teach your competitor how to replace you, whereas the other half actually argued to the opposite. Feeding these systems with the content from the New York Times would make, and other media organizations would actually make the model better, which would in the end benefit everybody. But there you already see how difficult and not black and white the entire discussion is. And also how much it is characterized not only by issues around fundamental rights, but also by enormous power asymmetries, because this is another truth of the digital environment, that the developments and the rollout is very much driven by a handful of very large, very powerful, and very vertically organized countries and organized companies. like OpenAI that has close link with Microsoft and the Microsoft Cloud, Llama that is directly linked to Facebook and Instagram, where Instagram is now trying to use actually all the content that we've all produced on Facebook and Instagram to train the model and make it even more powerful. So strong power and political and democratic power asymmetries there. Does that mean all is doom and gloom? No. The opposite can also be true. Because Harari was actually wrong on one point. In the end, it's not AI that hacks language, but it's humans that use it for good or for bad purposes. And exactly because language is the operating system of our democracy, it can have also, and generative AI models can have also hugely empowering effects. AI can be used to write fake letters, but AI can also be used by people who find it difficult to write a letter or don't know how to start, but want to share their concerns with policymakers. Letters that maybe otherwise they wouldn't have written, because maybe they didn't know the language or had no experience or didn't know how to write to a mayor. AI can be used to mass fabricate political message, to mislead or dissuade from voting, but it also can be used to make political message more fun, more compelling, more engaging, addressing citizens that normally wouldn't vote. Or think about the media. If the language is the operating system of a democracy, then the media are the killer applications. The role of the media in the democracy is to act as a critical observer and provide us with information we need to make democratic decisions, information we can trust. And as such, the role of the media as a democratic institution is maybe more important than ever. And the media find a lot of new forms of using AI to make media reporting more engaging, better, deeper, up to the point where for the first time actually two Pulitzer winners disclosed using AI in their reporting, for example in the context of data journalism. What I'm personally very excited about and hope to see much more in the future is using AI and generative AI to develop new ways of engaging with media content, like this app Artifact, which unfortunately didn't make it because there was not enough user demand. But right now we're talking to DPG Media, which is one of the largest media operators in the Netherlands, who are actually really interesting to try to experiment with modular journalism. And what Artifact is a nice example of what this can do. It can read you an article, it can give you a summary, it can translate it into a language, and can give you the headlines, produce it in a video. You can talk with the news. So I think, I really hope to see more development and experimentation with these possibilities, because I definitely think it would make the news more interesting and fun to read. But we already see now that AI is a lot used at the back end of media organization, helping journalists to produce content from different platforms, a bit like a co-pilot for journalists. And also on the positive side, AI companies themselves think more about how to use this technology responsible. Remember the political ads I showed you? So if you ask a co-pilot from Microsoft to do the very same, it will simply refuse to talk about the elections. Though sometimes companies can also overdo it. I'm not sure if you have followed Gemini's experiments to define guardrails and address bias in their large language models, up to a point where the system would actually not show any white people anymore, making Abraham Lincoln the way Gemini describes it here. So in the end, it very much boils down to the trustworthiness and reliability of AI tools. In an interview we did with a media professional, he said something that very much rang home. If we make an error over marketing, who cares, right? a few pixels wrong over here, doesn't matter much, we'll just fix the error. But if we use a fake picture or write errors in news articles today, it's a completely different story because we have different responsibilities. And that is also very much a perception that we see with a lot of media organizations, that because of their democratic role and responsibility towards society, having trustworthy tools is very important. On the other hand, we also see that they're often very dependent on external technology providers with little to no negotiation power to demand systems that respect their values. So when we talked to a Danish public broadcaster, he outright told us they would not even answer their phone. So we need to create the conditions that Gen AI can be used safely, and this is where the law comes into play. Which is, by the way, not only my personal perception, but we did a survey among Dutch citizens, where you see that, where we asked actually, should EU legislation exist to manage AI development, and a large minority of citizens agreed with that. Good, so that brings us to the law. But when we talk about the governance and regulation of law, it is actually interesting to see that we not only see a race to be have the fastest, biggest models and technologies, but suddenly we also have a race to have the first laws and the best principles and the most strict guidelines. The European Union was advertising the AI Act with the first ever legal framework on AI, which addresses the risks of AI and positions Europe to play a leading role globally. But more or less exactly the same language was used by the executive US order, establishing new standards, advancing American leadership around the world, and more. And I can assure you that Canada and China is more or less used exactly the same language. So we are here in a global race to be the first to govern AI. At the same time, we see very strongly conflicting positions. Maybe some of you have followed these letters in the early days of ChatGPT, warning about the risk of extinction from AI and that it should be a global priority on the same level with pandemics and nuclear war. So very much this doom thinking of what happens if we do not do. But on the other hand, just last week, the Californian government decided to block a bill regulating AI with the argument that doing so would inhibit innovation and deter companies from investing and building these models. So regulation has very much to govern this global force field, but also very conflicting positions. And then how do you do that, regulating AI? It sounds easy, but where to start actually, which approach? And we generally can distinguish three bigger approaches that we see globally right now. The one is a principled approach, where a government would define a set of key principles or values and demand that AI lives up to them. Then there is another approach, giving users concrete rights to ask and demand that these values are complied with, like the Brazilian law. And then there's the high-risk approach, which is the European approach, which essentially says the role of the regulator is to make sure that these technologies is not producing risk so that we all can use it without thinking and being concerned. And these different approaches have very different implications for the role of governments, but also for the role of big tech companies in defining what these values are. So to give you the example of a value-based governance approach, the law says the provision and use of generative AI service shall comply with laws and respect social morals and ethics. Anyone, any idea which country has such a value-based governance approach? It's not the country that you would expect. It's actually China. It's the interim measure for the management of generative AI. It's a very long text, but